Jeremy Fowler joins us right now. ESPN. Now, there's plenty of other things we need to get into. He's on the fan hotline. Jeremy, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
From the people you talked to, how soon could Dylan Gabriel start for this Browns football team? He played a little bit on Sunday in garbage time, but how soon could he start for this team?
Well, I don't sense like a major urgency to have to get Gabriel in the game right now as a starter, but it's a fluid situation like a lot of these are. You saw it last year with the Patriots and, Jacoby Brissett and him getting benched for Drake May. Like any bridge quarterback that's a bridge to a rookie draft pick, you have to win games to hold them off. If you don't win games, they're typically going to move on and see what the younger guy can do, and it's a nod to the future, and you go from there. But I don't sense that they're there yet. They feel like Flacco played pretty well week one. I know week two didn't go so well against the better team, a better defense. But they feel pretty good overall about where Flacco's at. And, they're trying not to totally rush this thing is my understanding, but it gets to a point in this league where it's week to week and you have to try to win. And I think Gabriel's mobility eventually will help him get in the lineup.
Jeremy Fowler joining us here on the fan hotline. All right, I kept asking the question, and because it's been brought up here this week after the Ravens game, Kenny Pickett, he was the first quarterback in the QB room this offseason. Then he gets traded for the 5th-round pick with the Raiders. First question is, was he Kevin Stefanski's guy? And then the second question I have to ask is, if he was Kenny Pickett, why would they trade him when Kevin is the 2-time coach of the year? And some people believe he might be fighting for his job by the end of the year.
Well, I don't know specifically if Kenny was Kevin's guy. I know that they thought he was good value at the time for a 5th-round pick. Like a lot of their off-season quarterback outlook had not developed yet at that time. They hadn't drafted anybody yet, so Kenny was considered good value, and at the very least gave him a baseline option that they can go out with and know that he can run the offense functionally and he can move around a little bit. He's a mobile guy, and it's a quarterback that they did like, yes, but really all along, well, I wouldn't say all along, but like coming out of the draft, I still remember hearing from some people with the Browns that like, hey, look, they got 4 quarterbacks now. They could certainly trade one. Like that's an option that they could exhaust. That was sort of the feeling I would say around the league. And then, Andrew Berry said like, hey, we're open to keeping 4 quarterbacks. And it did appear that was an option at one point. But I still go back to kind of what I was hearing in early May, which was like, they're going to trade one of these guys. And Kenny had value. Joe was kind of clearly the starter at that point. They had 2 rookies to develop. It just made sense to move on from him at that point. I don't think it was like, wow, this was Kevin's guy, and then now we're, moving him away from the team, and Kevin lost his soulmate. Like, I don't think it was that at all. This is a value-based league, and Kenny still had value for a team like the Raiders that needed a backup.
All right, Jeremy Fowler joining us on the hotline, giving us his excellent insights into this situation. Does the schedule matter? Sometimes around the league, you look at the schedules, the Browns start with a brutal one. Had it have been much softer earlier, do you think that could have changed anything?
Change anything as far as who they would have started or how they would have started?
Or how quickly they would be open to moving on?
That's a good question. I don't know. Really, when you look at the schedules, I do think the media makes more of the schedule than the teams because there's so much parity now. Like, there are probably 20 good teams. So every week is going to be tough, unless you're playing one of the bottom feeders. I feel like it's 16 to 20 teams can win anywhere from 8 to 13 games, and then the other 12 are going to be pretty bad. That's kind of how it's been or how it feels like. And so most weeks you're going to have one of those tough teams. Like the fact that Cleveland opened with 2 playoff teams or teams that are playoff caliber, like I don't think that affects the thinking all that much, just in my experience. It just was clear all along in camp that Joe Flacco was going to be the starter. I don't think there was any doubt. And I talked to people over there. It just felt like he was a cut above, and he knows how to run Kevin's system. I thought he showed a little more mobility than maybe I thought week one. I know that didn't work out week 2 against the defense that was kind of living in the backfield and all over him. But I don't sense there's any sort of strategy in that regard with the schedule. I think it was more just like I do think they legitimately wanted that quarterback battle to play out organically, just by the way they were running it, where you had 4 guys getting reps on dual fields and they wanted to just see how it went. Like the time I visited their training camp in late July, it was clear that like they were trying to get guys as many throws as possible, all 4 of them, and just kind of duel it out that way. It was actually pretty unique compared to a lot of camps I go to where third stringers, fourth stringers don't get a lot of reps. So, I don't think there was a plot strategically about the schedule or about how things had to go a certain way. I think they just wanted to see it play out, knowing that Joe was probably the favorite all along.
Jeremy Fowler joining us from ESPN. Adam Schefter had that report before the game started on Sunday about the Ravens having plans to draft Shador Sanders, Shador rebuffing them. Did you get the same sense that he wanted to be a starter, so he didn't really want to go to Baltimore?
Well, I don't know if it was specific to Baltimore. I think it was more about, well, look, this is a quarterback that thought he was going to be drafted much higher, and as a result, wanted to go to a place where he feels like he can play. But I think in the micro, that story speaks to some of the issues Shador had with the process. Like I know I talked to one team in particular that interviewed Shador, that looked at him pretty hard, that was drafting a quarterback. And, he would ask questions in those meetings such as like, well, what kind of weapons are you going to put around me? Instead of like focusing on the film that they're breaking down in the pre-draft interview. He was thinking in terms of like, what situation am I going to be in, as opposed to, how can I impress with my knowledge in this particular meeting? So not that he was, with these teams I talked to, like, difficult or came off as a bad personality or anything like that. There was probably a little bit of a nod to a self-serving part of the draft, which, he thought he was going to go much higher, so that's sort of understandable on some levels. So I don't know if I was overly surprised by that story when I saw it. And plus on day 3, there's a lot of time that teams have to think about what happened the day before, and you're sort of taking chances on players that maybe you normally wouldn't. 4th, 5th round, if you're the Ravens, you might be thinking, hey, Shador's great value. So let's make a call to either him or his representative or Dion and try to feel that situation out. And look, if I'm Shador, I mean, Baltimore, you could argue Baltimore would be a great situation to go to because you're going to a great team, you're learning from Lamar Jackson, maybe you get to play at some point or go somewhere else to play. But, he's a 2-time MVP, so it's like if you had a pick, you'd probably rather go elsewhere if you're trying to play early. I do understand from his standpoint why he would want that.
I love having Jeremy Fowler on with us because he'll level with us, so we'll just get right to it. Will Deshaun Watson factor into this conversation at all this year, or should we as a show stop talking about him?
I'll never say never. I don't get the sense that he's been in the plans this year. Plus, he's got a long way to go. I do think he's progressing nicely, and he's been throwing for a while now, I know. He's been getting after it. Like I remember even the day I was there in Cleveland for training camp, he was throwing around a ton of weight in the background in that weight room that's adjacent to the practice fields. Like he was getting after it. He was also visible, which with a big crowd wasn't necessarily a surprise to me, but he was in there working hard. I've heard nothing but good things about how he's approached the rehab, how he's helped the other quarterbacks in the quarterback room. He has been a total team guy. He hasn't been a drag. He's been a positive influence on the other quarterbacks, from my understanding. The camaraderie's been good. So I'll never totally take it off the table, but I think based on all that's happened, and I do think about the insurance policy that the team does have on Deshaun and some of the cap savings that could be involved, and could that be jeopardized if you put him back out there? I cannot speak for the team, but I do think about that. And if I had to make an educated guess, I would think that is a factor in all this. So there's a lot at play. It would be at least a mild surprise to me if he played this year.
Well, it's just there's been some reporting out there that, the Browns really want this to be a stand on the sidelines, learn the game year for Shador. And if that is the case and we get into one of those emergency situations, there is somebody who's still getting paid a lot of money. And look, they took his signage down all over the stadium. Jeremy, there's no real visible signs of Deshaun Watson in a lot of their engagement. They did wish him a nice happy birthday over the weekend on social media. So that's why I wanted to know. He also, got to say, Jimmy Haslam, the owner, attended his wedding over the offseason. So it doesn't seem like there's any bad blood between the two sides.
No, I don't think so. I do go back to what Jimmy Haslam said in the offseason about essentially admitting the mistake that was signing and Deshaun and trading for him. And, that was a pretty bold statement. I think that was his way of letting the team move on, and him sort of shouldering the blame for that. Whether he plays there or not, again, at least it provides a collective exhale, I think. That's not necessarily a knock on Deshaun, but it's just a way for everybody to, regroup. After 3 years, it just didn't go the way anybody planned. So, and it was quite the journey. I mean, I know the play was not good, but it's unfortunate with the injury timing because he had some windows there, or at least a few games, especially in that second year, where it's like, okay, he's turning the corner a little bit. Then injuries happen, and then he comes back. The play wasn't good. They tried to tailor the offense around him and got Ken Dorsey involved. It's just like the whole thing never came together. So I think because of that, it'd be hard to see him playing this year. But, to your point, and when I talk to Browns people about this, they insist that he's been a very hard worker and he's been great to deal with. I don't think he's been a problem behind the scenes at all, and I think the relations are good. It just didn't work out.
Jeremy Fowler joining us here on the show. Tone, you wanted to ask about Tom Brady before I ask my question.
Right now there seems to be some angst around the league as people are starting to notice. Yeah, the guy's broadcasting games and can get into any type of meeting, talk to coaches around the league. He's also now sitting in the coach's box on Monday night. The NFL said this is okay. What are you hearing from people?
Well, they're saying it's okay because they had cleared this before. I mean, ownership allowed it with, a vote that you have to get a majority on, 24-8 at least among the 32 owners. And this has been approved already, so they're not going to go back on that. And, if you're a minority owner, you're allowed to sit in the box. There are some stipulations to all this. I don't have it all in front of me, but I know that teams, I could see them being a little skeptical of telling Tom Brady specific intel in a pre-production meeting. I could see that being an issue, and that's probably a theme that's not going away anytime soon. And so, the Raiders they're walking sort of a difficult line, at least from Pete Carroll's standpoint. We have to answer questions about it, and you have to make sure that, Brady's not too involved, but also he's a minority owner that can probably help the team and is a good resource in a lot of ways, and that's allowed because of what's been approved and his role in the team. So, and look, make no mistake, I mean, he's been involved, or at least when you talk to people around the league, they believe he's been firmly involved in a lot of the decisions there. Certainly the GM and the head coach are making those, but Mark Davis structured this to he wants Tom Brady a part of the process. So at the very least, he is that.
Jeremy Fowler joining us from ESPN. How stable is the footing for Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry and their jobs right now?
Well, it's week 3, and I don't think that anybody around the league expected them to be 2-0 right now. So with 2 tough AFC North teams, I thought the offense was better than I expected week 1, and then week 2, didn't go as well, but at least they did run the ball and had some promise with guys like Quinshon Judkins. And yeah, I don't think it's an issue right now. I just don't. There are other teams around the league I think it's a little stronger. I feel like Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski are well supported there. They made the trade in the draft with multiple years in mind. That was made very clear to me. So it wasn't a panic move. I think if they had to win now or win the first 8 games of this year or else, then they would have made a different draft move. That's my opinion, just based on kind of asking around and kind of knowing what I know about that draft process. So, I'd be surprised if anything happens in the short term, but you have to win in this league. And so, the team's sitting at a really ugly spot in November or whenever it is. I'll never take anything off the table. I just don't sense a lot of urgency to make something happen right now, as opposed to the pressure that's around, say, Miami right now, or maybe some other hot spots.
Jeremy, how bad do the Browns look with Baker Mayfield playing the way he has through 2 games following up his playoff season a year ago?
Well, Baker's been playing well for 2.5 years now, so this is really nothing new. I mean, I know it's convenient, and he played on Monday Night Football to come from behind victory, and those are always bigger stages, those primetime games. But, he's been balling. He's been a top 10 quarterback for more than a year. Tampa hit that one out of the park by signing him to a 1-year, $5 million deal, whatever it was, 2 years ago. And then they extended him to what's now a incredible bargain. I think he's at $30-something million a year when, guys like Dak Prescott are making 60. So, I mean, the Baker divorce I'll never quite understand. For whatever reason, they just got to a point where they were not hitting it off. I do think Baker has matured a lot, and he's been humbled, and that is part of it, And so it didn't always go so well in Cleveland, and there was some friction there. So it's like I think the team felt like there was a ceiling that Baker had in Cleveland. But, the people, the scouts, and those who evaluated Baker and always loved him, like they saw things that have translated in Tampa, which he's super accurate, super competitive, fierce competitor, will get after it, can make difficult throws, and is really tough. So all that's played out, we can go through the revisionist history for an hour if we wanted to, but the truth is that several teams were trying to trade for Deshaun Watson, who, before he sat out that year in Houston, was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I will say things have changed a little bit, I feel like, with the haves and the have-nots of the quarterback, sort of outlook league-wide, where at that time, 4 or 5 years ago, or when teams were evaluating quarterbacks, it's like, if you don't have a top 10 guy, you have no chance. That was sort of the feeling. And I do think that now it's a little different. You got Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Daniel Jones now. Carson Wentz is about to play in Minnesota. Teams are now realizing that these really talented former top 10 picks, sometimes they just need a reset. They need a better environment. I don't know that Baker would have been ultra successful if he stayed in Cleveland. It just got to a point where it was a difficult relationship. Sometimes that happens. You got Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. He's really talented. I think he can go somewhere else in a year or two and have success. So it's that recycled nature of the quarterback position is sometimes needed for both parties.
At Jay Fowler, ESPN on Twitter. Jeremy Fowler, ESPN. Jeremy, go enjoy the doggos, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Jeremy Fowler on the Fan Hotline.